Feeding time. A voice roused Alex from his fitful sleep. He rolled over in his bed, tossing the blanket off and stretching his arms and legs. That was a terrible dream. Kidnapped from home, fighting to escape from giant bugs, meeting the first alien he could talk to, at least with his mind, only for that same one to exile him to a Deathworld. It showed him visions of Earth burning, cities crumbling, everyone he knew screaming in horror. Was it showing him the future? Was Alex a test sample to see if they could conquer us? Well, he had shown it how ferociously he fought those bugs. He had told it he would make it pay. And he had some of the alien's own memories now. There was a spaceship, landed on the surface of an unknown world, but under two suns that seemed strangely familiar. When he sat up, he was surprised the old box spring mattress felt so firm, and it was so white in his bedroom. Had he slept in? He squinted under the harsh light. No, the walls were white, as normal. But there was supposed to be a window on that one, and a closet door on the other. But weren't they further away from his bed? He grabbed his comforter. It was a thin sheet of dark grey fabric, rough like wool. That was odd. He remembered it being thick and padded, so soft it was nearly plush from all the softener he used in the washing machine. It was missing that nice sea green colour. When he tried to replace the sheet, he found there was no sheet underneath. His hand felt warm metal. Alex jumped up in alarm. This was not his bedroom. This was not Earth. He was in the dream again. He winced from the sudden movement. He had pulled on some of the stitches where they extracted the shrapnel, and his ears still rang the faintest bit even in the silence of this room. No, this couldn't be a dream. It felt too real. He guessed he was on some kind of ship, on the way to the Deathworld. At least he didn't have to hunch over in this cage. It was tall enough, but only as wide and long as the metal bunk he had been sleeping on. The otherwise blank wall in front of him had only two visible seams, one near the bottom, shuttered open. He darted at it, to hold it open, but his meal had already been shoved through and the hatch sealed before he could get his hands on it. He peered through the other seam, which was situated about waist high on the wall, and contained a small rectangular eye slit. His eyes made one of those little greys, which leapt back in surprise. Alex felt the fear wash over him. Yes, he could melt minds with this one, somehow. How did he do it the first time? He stared at him, and the memories and visions just came to mind. As before, they struck him all at once. Lifetimes upon lifetimes lived and died, overloading his mind like he was trying to drink water from a fire hose. This grey didn't know about the spaceship and the two suns. It had memories dating back generations, but not millennia. Alex wasn't interested in those. He wanted to know what it was doing, who it was, where they were going. He held on a little longer, feeling his skull pound and his jaw clench, and his face scrunch all the way to the near present. This was a military ship, belonging to the Alderaan Union. It was transporting high-priority Concord prisoners to the Deathworld Sardis. This was just a low-rank grey. Thallo was his name, and he was on duty feeding the prisoners. He had just fed the ship queen, who complained through the universal translator installed in her cell that it was hardly enough. And the couple of bugs that hadn't attacked Alex, the little drone he escaped from, and the bigger blue one that he had used as a shield, had been placed in their own cell, for fear that the ship queen would have executed them en route. Alex felt the Grey's contempt for them. He had to keep them alive so that they could just be executed when the prisoners were all dropped on Sardis. Alex quit trying to read minds. Head throbbing and chest heaving, he saw Thallo shudder in the corridor outside his cell through the eye slit. Thallo gave him a second look. Alex played dumb, pointedly staring his eyes at the cart full of steaming meals that Thallo was pushing. The Grey shrugged and marched to the next cell, though not without giving Alex one more quick glance. When he passed out of Alex's limited view from the eye slit, Alex felt the last of the psionic sinews between them snap. He took the reward for his taxing efforts off on the cell floor. He knew from Thallo what was inside. He unwrapped the foil-like wrapper and pulled out several freshly baked nutrient bars. They tasted like cardboard, but they didn't quite sate his appetite, but they would keep him healthy. Feeling a little rejuvenated, he went back to his bunk to sit and think. He had to recompose himself. He was getting fitful sleep because he was dreading what he had seen, what that other Grey, the one named Malice, had shown him. Fitful sleep meant being tired, and being tired meant making poor decisions, the kind that wouldn't get him home. He had to sort it out. First off, of the two Greys he'd met so far, only Malice knew what Earth was, or where it was. And Malice only knew that because he had seen what Alex saw. Thado may have only been a low-level grunt, but he had a first-hand taste of recent history. The Union hadn't conquered anyone before. It had come to the Raffi and the Clackens to bring peace. It was fighting the unknown and needed allies. Why would Malice show him Earth burning if the Union was so peace-loving? But Alex pulled out something from Thado's memory that troubled him. Something recent that he hadn't missed in the images flashing by. While this ship was docked in port somewhere, Thado paid for a vision session. He was shown a fantasy of a female Alderaan he used to know. It felt almost as real and disgusting to Alex as everything else he had seen. If even the back-alley seers could manipulate memories into such vivid fantasies and dreams, Alex reasoned that the most skilled manipulators could show things practically indistinguishable from reality. Malice had not shown him the future, Alex concluded. Malice had taken Alex's happy memories and shaped them into a horrible future to scare the human into submission. So, Earth was not doomed to destruction. Alex was no test case on the eve of invasion. The Union had no plans for his home. If he could just escape this Deathworld, he would see those green trees and smiling faces once again. But it wouldn't hurt, along the way, Alex thought, if he could give Malice something more than a piece of his mind. The food packet tumbled into the small white cell. Bagram sniffed it and grunted his disapproval. The Alderaan at the islet shrugged and moved on. Begrudgingly, the raft tore the wrapping open and marched on some of the nutrient bars inside. As he chewed, he took one claw and scratched off his tally on the wall. 21 days, 63 meals into the voyage. They should be arriving at Sardis any day now. He still couldn't believe he volunteered for this. "I need someone for a secret mission," Grems had told him. "Poor chances of survival, let alone success. But all Urash, maybe even all the 12 tribes, will be grateful for your service if you succeed." And, like the fool he was, Bagram had taken the bait. He had been demoted to frigate captain for dishonourable conduct. He had been outcast from the promotion ladder, while his mates from the academy went on to captain battleships and command fleets. He had been sent to guard the miserably quiet frontier. Any chance to claw back at honour and recognition he would seize in a heartbeat. Gremza, a trickster born to be an Alderaan if not for his fur and claws, knew that. If Bagram died on Sardis, what did he stand to lose? He was a promising candidate who had grown up and become a washed-out commander. He had no money, nor fame, nor family to look after. No. Death would be a sweet relief from a dead-end career. But this monotony of sleeping, eating, waiting in his cell, eating, sleeping, while they travelled to Sardis, this was too much for him. It still stung a little bit to lose his commission for espionage against the Concord and be fabricated into a death sentence to Sardis. He didn't dare hold it far away enough from his chest to look at, for fear that any hidden camera might spot it, but he cradled the tiny comm in the cup of his paw. The Raffi on the prison's command station were all Urashi, one of the perks of being the smallest nation to contribute to the war effort against the unknown. They would receive his messages from the surface and pass them on to Gremza and the other government leaders. He could tell them exactly what the creature knew that scared the Alderaan councillor so much. He just needed the chance to talk with it, to develop the primitive sign language they started when the creature was in their custody. Right now they had a greeting. The right forepaw raised high and waved around a bit, and some other basic signals. But the more time they spent together, the more signs they could develop. Maybe he could even teach Itarashi, if his tongue could handle it. He wondered how it had handled waking up in the cell again, 21 days ago now. How was it keeping itself preoccupied? At least Bagram could write on the walls with a claw. As he reached up to continue the death poem he had been working on, the lights in his cell suddenly turned red. With a mechanical whir, the bunk beside him folded seamlessly into the floor, and out from the wall extended a chair large enough to accommodate his bulk. "Be seated and strap in for deployment," the intercom announced. He felt his feet leave the floor, as the gravity was cut to his cell. Bagram climbed into the seat, whose feet were bolted onto the wall, with the back braced against the floor, and strapped himself in. Above, he watched the meal wrapper float around. A heavy jolt threw him into his restraints. He craned his neck to see through the ice slit, the ship disappear, replaced by the black void and the passing flash of a white-hot star, as his cell turned landing pod, reoriented itself. Other lights spun around in orbit, igniting their engines to descend to the surface on wide chemical plumes. One of those was the thing. He just had to reach it. The pod started to shudder and shake as it hit the atmosphere. Superheated plasma blocked the tiny ice slit. He felt the acceleration climbing and climbing, forcing him further and further into the seat cushion. At last, it started to slacken more and more, until he felt the thrusters rumble again from underneath him. The pod came to an absolute stop just as it landed, bobbing up and down like a cork. The door blasted off its explosive bolts automatically. A dark wave of freezing water poured into the capsule. Berggren quickly unbuckled himself and climbed out over it, clinging to the pod as it quickly sank and hit the river bottom, only the top of its scorched exterior sticking out over the rushing waters. The river wasn't particularly wide, though it did run fast judging by the speed of passing debris. Trees hemmed in its banks on both sides. Their dense boughs enveloped the forest in impenetrable shadow, and their black-green leaves pointed out like daggers. Above him, like meteors, other landing pods streaked flaming hot across the pale sky. Berggren made sure he still had his comm, turned on his tracker, and swam to the riverbank to follow them. One of them contained his target.